Black Lives Matter and police brutality. Pastor Hammond, if you don't mind going first, and then Pastor Jackson.
Sure. This is, without question, one of the most challenging times that we've been through regarding social justice. And I've probably gotten more questions about where does the church stand as far as Black Lives Matter, social justice, police brutality. But if I could just take maybe one at a time, I would say as far as, well, let me just say this first. Black Lives Matter. They matter to me because it matters to God. Social justice matters to me because it matters to God. Micah says, what does God want from us? To do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. So he's interested in us seeking justice. And when we see unjust situations going on, the church is responsible for speaking out and stepping in these situations, regardless of politics, policies, and all the rest of that. We're responsible. It's a calling, it's a biblical mandate that God has given us. As far as Black Lives Matter is concerned, I try to differentiate between Black Lives Matter, the organization, and Black Lives Matter as far as the slogan is concerned. It started perhaps with the organization, but then people just started understanding the reality because of the climate that we're in right now, and many of the Black lives that have been lost, that Black lives, in fact, do matter. And I believe the majority of the time when people say Black Lives Matter, they're not necessarily linking themselves to the organization, but it's more so just the reality and the fact that Black lives do matter. Now, when it comes to the church and supporting the organization, I think that the organization is not necessarily a faith-based organization. So many of their tenets, or some, I should say, of their tenets and beliefs may not necessarily align with mainstream churches and what the church believes. But many of the things that they espouse to also are just humanity issues that the church can connect with. So in general, I support the premise that they set forth that Black Lives Matter. And I think if I could be so bold as to say this, at this time in our society, I think that many times, especially within the African American community, that a wedge is trying to be put in many places, any place that there's an opening, to try to separate and divide the Black community. And I suppose sometimes when the question comes to me about Black Lives Matter, not from you tonight, but just in general, a lot of times people are wanting they're asking me, not just as a pastor, but as a Black man, they're wanting me to kind of denigrate that organization because they know it doesn't necessarily line up some of the things with church values and whatnot. But I try not to throw out the baby with the bathwater, because a lot of things that they're saying are good and that we can hook up with. But we support definitely the sentiment and the reality that Black lives do matter because they matter to God.
So, Pastor Jackson, what are your thoughts as it relates to Black Lives Matter, and then we can continue the conversation as it relates to police brutality?
Absolutely, Cortland. I ditto everything that Pastor Hammond just lifted. Black Lives Matter because they matter to God. They matter to us. They should matter to us. And we see that all over. We see it in the NBA. There's been a major stance. We've seen it in the NFL. Just across, anyone that has a platform is using it. And as a quick segue, I had to be careful not to become numb when I saw the police officer with his hand in his pocket, with his knee on the neck of our dearly beloved departed George Floyd, as he cried out, "I can't breathe," and he called out for his mama. He called out, and other police officers, I guess footage a lot of us couldn't even see. There were other police officers that were just standing by. One was holding his legs. Another one had his knee on his neck, and still another was trying to ward off anyone from trying to rescue him. And I feel like if we as pastors with platforms, if you all with this platform and this podcast that you have, do not cry aloud and spare not and speak truth to power, then we are no better than the other police officers that continue to allow injustice to rise. It was Bishop Leonard Smith who is quoted as saying, "Jesus is justice." And so if we name the name of Jesus, we believe by the word of God that Jesus, in fact, stands up for righteousness, is righteousness, and is justice. And so we cannot bite our tongue. We cannot be bashful when it comes to crying out for injustices in the land. And just as a quick side note, I knew my role, but I also had to make room for our congregants to express themselves. My chair, Deacon Ryan Jackson, was able to put together a film of just how this rocked him to the core. And so we added that as a part of one of our services, and we just continue to share it on YouTube. And it got close to, 15,000 likes or something like that. But it just took off. And the Lord just reminded me to be faithful, to be consistent in my messaging, because in my boldness, I some way am empowering all those that are connected to me.
So this has been really a very rich conversation.
Oh, that's looking mildly. Yeah, this is great.
And we're coming up on our second break. So I'm curious, as we transition into our second break, we're going to allow both of the gentlemen who are here with us, if you're just joining us, Pastor Hammond and Pastor Jackson. They're going to share a little bit more about their views and their thoughts as it relates to social justice on the other side of the break. But I am curious, Shauna, because we haven't heard anything from you in a minute. What are your thoughts about what you've been hearing so far?
Man, I mean, just Black Lives Matter because they matter to God. I mean, that just, it really sums it up. And being able to differentiate and say, yes, there's the slogan, there's the sentiment, and then there's the organization, and being able to kind of say, where we are with that. But really, Pastor Hammond and Pastor Jackson really said that the Black Lives Matter because they matter to God. And so when we're looking at these issues today, being able to say, how do we look at them through the lens of Christ? What would Christ have for us to do, and to speak out? And you're right. It says Jesus is justice. I like that, Pastor Jackson. And so I'm just excited to continue this conversation, and we're going to get a little bit more from them. And then I want to be able to prepare our listeners and pastors. I know you're going to be able to leave us, because this will be our last segment after the break, to give us a word of hope, because that's what we are really about here at Village Talk, to be able to leave us with a word of hope for our listeners during this unprecedented time. So again, this is Village Talk, where we highlight the voices and the views of the community. We'll be right back after our break.
Feature your business with a full or half-page ad in an upcoming issue of Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine. Advertise your business, book, or event and reach potential clients. Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine covers and features stories in business and entrepreneurship, education, performing arts, sports, community outreach, fashion, travel and real estate, health and wellness, and more. Contact us at info@vnpmagazine.com, or you can reach out to our Director of Sales, Ms. Karen McConnell-Jones, at 202-904-1000. Vision and Purpose, inspiring our community.
So welcome back, everybody, and we hope you have been able to remain with us. We have had a very rich dialogue on the role of the pastor in the community. The church doors are still open, and we again want to thank Pastor Hammond and Pastor Jackson for joining us. Yeah. And we definitely want to make sure we allow them time, because I know you are as excited as I am, Shauna, but we want to make sure we leave room for them to leave that word of hope with us. So, Pastor Hammond, before the break, we wanted you to allow you the opportunity to share any thoughts you have remaining on the subject of social justice or police brutality. And then Shauna's going to invite our guests to share with us some encouraging words.
Well, thanks, Cortland. As far as police brutality is concerned, the reality of it is this really, for me, just a very painful reality, because every time I see an incident of police brutality, I come face to face with the reality that it could be me. It could be me. And I haven't suffered police brutality, but I have been racially profiled several times, pulled over by the police, and treated very, very disrespectfully. And as a grown man, it's difficult to put into words how you feel when you're stopped. That fear, like you're a little boy, putting the hands at the 10-2 position, going through the yes sir, yes ma'ams, just trying to make sure that you get out of that situation, so that you can live to tell whatever the story needs to be. And several times I've gone through the situation, and intentionally did not pay the ticket or whatever, so I could go to court, express my misgivings about how the situation was handled. But even above and beyond all of that, what I have tried to do, whether it's through community organizations, civic associations, and even just speaking with police one-on-one, is to understand there has to be some policy change. There has to be some policy change. I have friends, family that are police, so yes, it's a reality that every police person is not a bad person. That's just the reality. And I would even say that many more are good police than there are those who are doing the negative things that we've seen out there. But surely we have to find a way to weed out the bad apples, because it simply cannot continue.
I just want to simply add, because I definitely want to make sure we allow time for both of you to close the show. My conversations ongoing about social justice, in particular, talking with Shauna on a weekly basis, caused me to inquire as to whether today, if there are African Americans who see the police like those hooded Klansmen, which I think is a real reality for those who have to suffer unjustly. I myself have not been a victim of police brutality, but to better understand those who do, it brought that thought to mind. What I do suffer from now that I hadn't prior was this internal feeling that I have when I see a police car or I see a police officer, and it's not fear. And it's a feeling that I feel only because of these traumatic experiences I am now seeing. So now I am affected by racism as it relates to police brutality, though not directly. And that's what prompted me to pose this question as to whether some may see the police as hooded Klansmen, particularly when in the 60s, the police were actually used to keep Blacks in order. So in some ways, it doesn't seem as if the nation has changed as it relates to that. So I agree with you 100%. But I know, Shauna, now wants to be able to allow you guys to